Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. Tonight, we're going to discuss solar panel recycling. It's a big elephant in the room. Solar is indeed the cheapest form of generating energy, electricity for your home, for your office. And as that becomes a worldwide phenomenon, growing as it has since 2016, when it was essentially the cheapest form of generating electricity for about 30 of the largest countries in the world. Now it is, according to the World Economic Forum, it is completely it's the cheapest in generating. Now, what does that mean for the world? What it means is that solar panels are going to spread across the earth. And that is not going as quickly as people had anticipated it would due to their cost. And largely, I think that is due to some manufacturing difficulties and the continuing research that's occurring and the innovations that are occurring within that process. So I'll touch base on those in a future video. But primarily, you're looking at somewhere between 20 and 30 years of use out of a panel, depending on make and brand and all of the rest of that. But what happens at the end of that? They're easy to deploy. You slap them on your roof, put them on rails, and away you go. Or easy to demob off your roof. Take off the rails and put another set, or put another solar system in its place. But that's where the dump problem begins. How do you handle that green waste? Because it is green waste, and while it's not as toxic as, say, a nuclear waste, it is still a large amount of panels that are just being literally taken off of the homes or the commercial applications where they have been installed and trucked to the dump and tossed into the landfill. Now, granted, I think in the future that landfills are going to be the mines of the future, but that doesn't mean we should continue to hit this wasteful disposal process. We need to think about how we're handling this, because we really do need to be stewards of the earth. It is something we have a responsibility to do, not just for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren, but because it's the right thing to do. And it always has been. And it's also, in most cases, the most economic thing to do long term. That is the secret long term. There are those that are only focused on the short-term profit. That's short-sighted, and oftentimes those businesses fail because they are short-sighted. But that's a business challenge that exists within the marketplace, and one that over time, having quality vendors and manufacturers involved in this process will change. From a standpoint of recycling, though, the numbers that I've come across over the last year put it somewhere between 20 to 30, roughly $30 to recycle. So let's call it $30 at the upper end there, and see what that gives us. Well, when you have to be able to dismantle, and then as you break it apart, there's human labor involved in that. This isn't the same thing as, say, recycling aluminum, where you can just toss it in and heat it up and away you go, or copper or any other metal. In this case, you have to break it up into its component parts before you can begin that recycling process. That makes it very different than a lot of other recyclable wastes. So you have to shred it, and then you have to break apart, or you break it apart and then you shred it, and then you have to You probably got some forms of milling in that, and then you get into how you break apart the glass and other components that are part of that. Some of that is going to be done through chemical processes, and others are going to be done through obviously melting down the aluminum frame around the outside, or the copper that's in for wiring and other components of that. And you do have a good number of materials involved in a solar panel. Everything from aluminum, copper, lead, some glass, which is essentially silicon, silver, some tin. All of these things are recoverable, but the amount that's recoverable from each panel is only about $3, which makes that process economically not viable. You're losing $27 for each panel you recycle. Now, some will say, oh, well, you can scale that process up and do more. Potentially, there is some cost savings that exists in that process. But you will need to come up with improving the overall process of recycling it beyond just scale. And that's where, perhaps something that pops into my mind right now is the overall recycling of lead acid batteries and how they grind those up, and then the plasticky parts float, and then the lead drops to the bottom, and they go through multiple iterations. But again, even in that, you have wastewater that is, in most of the cases now, that's a recycled system within their recycling process. But still, there's the potential for innovation there, but it hasn't had the time for that research to truly materialize into a strong, clear, profitable process. I think in time we will actually see companies like Redwood Materials come up with very clearly recyclable processes for some of these greener products. And it's important that they do, because there's a lot of them, and they're part of the overall green solution for generating power from the sun, which, as Elon Musk has pointed out, I think it's like 200 kilometers of Earth, square kilometers of ground would power most of the Earth. That's pretty damn impressive for our power needs if we were able to capture everything that the sun is providing, which current PV panels are not that efficient. I think they're averaging somewhere in the 20 percentile range, 20 to 30s at the upper end. And there's some rumors of breakthroughs, and you'll see lots of that online. But from a perspective of what's being manufactured and deployed, it's in the 20 percentiles, somewhere between 20 and 30% effective. That's useful, but again, we've got the issue of time and recycling. And let's say that tomorrow somebody creates solar panels that are 60% effective or efficient at capturing and harnessing the sun as it flows through. Well, if you have a 20% panel, what are you going to do? You're going to want to upgrade that panel, obviously, because now instead of barely being able to provide for your home, you'll have excess available for your home and to sell back to the grid potentially. But as things become more effective, we'll see how well that game gets played. But it's important as we look forward that we keep looking at this. I don't believe, as some would argue, that subsidies are the best answer, because every time you add subsidies, you end up with corruption, as we've seen in just about every government program that ever comes into existence. And it always creates a monopolistic structure, and that just is a damper on innovation. The alternatives that I see, Tesla bot is definitely part of that because of the labor factor that's there. Redwood Materials, I think, will help innovate. I think there'll be others. I'd love to hear what your comments are and innovative ideas that you may have. Please drop them in the comments and we can discuss them and we can go into that in more detail. So give this video a like and please comment below and we'll continue on in the chat. Have a good night.